I'm so tired of liberals ghosting half this country. Conservatives do it too, but not nearly as much. Look, whoever's doing it, it's got to stop, because we're at a point now where politics has broken up more families than letting your wife see your phone. Maybe the problem isn't that America isn't worth defending. Maybe the problem is that lots of people today are entitled whiners who have no perspective and no idea how good they have it.
Bill Maher is taking aim at the left once again, and this time he's calling out what he sees as their growing contempt for America. Ever since Trump began his second term, many liberals who proudly celebrated America under Biden now seem eager to criticize the country at every opportunity. Maher has noticed the contradiction. Rather than joining the chorus attacking America, he's challenging that mindset head-on. As always, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy videos like this, and let's dive right into today's story.
On the liberal side, there's two camps now. The we need to keep talking to people wing and the go no contact wing. That's what they call it now, go no contact. This belief that Trump voters, even if it's your own parents, are too deplorable for human contact and must be cut off. You know, like Scientologists do to suppressive people.
Maher began by criticizing Democrats for their unwillingness to engage with anyone who supported Trump. In their eyes, Trump voters are often treated as deplorable, socially unacceptable, and not even worth speaking to. And Maher believes there's a serious problem with that attitude. We've all seen the stories about Jimmy Kimmel's wife openly admitting that she sent letters to relatives urging them not to vote for Trump, then cutting ties with those who ignored her advice. Instead of being viewed as extreme, many praised it as a moral stand. On top of that, countless Democrat women have publicly declared they refuse to date Republican men, as though political disagreement automatically reflects someone's character. Maher's point is direct and difficult to ignore. When you refuse to talk, listen, or peacefully coexist with half the country, you're not protecting democracy. You're weakening it. Somewhere along the way, disagreement turned into social exile. Maher isn't letting Democrats pretend they weren't the ones drawing those dividing lines.
Speechwriter for Obama named David Litt wrote an op-ed this year called, "Is it time to stop snubbing your right-wing family?" where he admitted he'd had a change of heart and that was the wrong approach. So, of course, then the woke wing tried to banish him for breaking ranks on their policy of hating people who don't agree with you on everything, because what fun is life if you're not cutting somebody off?
According to Maher, the problem continues to grow. Some liberals who simply choose to speak with conservatives are now being criticized, isolated, or even pushed aside. Not because they've suddenly become conservatives, but because they committed what many now consider the unforgivable act of having a conversation with the other side. That's where the situation becomes truly absurd. If the left genuinely believed its ideas were strong enough, conversation wouldn't be viewed as betrayal. It would be welcomed as an opportunity. After all, meaningful discussions are how people change minds, challenge assumptions, and sometimes discover common ground. But instead of embracing dialogue, many on the left now treat it as something dangerous. Maher's point is clear. A movement that fears conversation isn't demonstrating confidence in its beliefs. It's revealing insecurity. Silencing opposing voices doesn't strengthen your argument. It only suggests you're afraid to defend it.
Mr. Litt asked the question, what has all this banishing accomplished? Oh, I know. A second helping of MAGA, that's what. Molly McNerney, Jimmy Kimmel's wife and head writer, went public on this topic recently, so I feel it's fair to comment respectfully in public. She says she's lost relationships with relatives because she wrote them an email before the election with 10 reasons why they shouldn't vote for Trump, and some still didn't obey. So, you know.
Yes, that's exactly the story I mentioned earlier about Jimmy Kimmel's wife, and she's far from being the only example. There are many others who genuinely believe that people on the left should never engage with conservatives under any circumstances. To them, simply having a conversation is seen as an act of betrayal. But honestly, I don't place all the responsibility on her. Much of the blame belongs to influential figures like her husband, who have spent years portraying Trump as such an overwhelming threat that many liberals now believe he's completely unfit to serve as president. When media personalities describe political opponents as existential dangers instead of political rivals, it changes the way people view their neighbors, friends, and even members of their own families. Maher's broader point is especially powerful here. This kind of rhetoric doesn't merely shape political opinions. It damages personal relationships. Once politics becomes a matter of absolute morality, disagreement is no longer accepted as normal. Instead, it's treated as something dangerous that must be completely cut out.
10 reasons. I could think of 100. But I would never present it to someone as an ultimatum. Ultimatums don't make people rethink their politics. They make them rethink you. Somewhere along the way, my values became code for I'm the only one with the moral compass. You know what would have been a better exercise? Write a top 10 list to yourself where you try to imagine 10 reasons why 77 million Americans didn't want to trust you with taking power. And I say that as someone who votes Democratic. As I like to remind my very pure friends, we voted for the same person. You're just why she lost.
Maher argues that it's difficult to deny what happened. Many believe the party played a major role in its own defeat. First, party leaders rallied behind an unproven and deeply unpopular candidate, assuming voters would simply fall in line instead of feeling inspired. Then they focused on messages that failed to connect with everyday Americans, messages that seemed disconnected from concerns like the economy, public safety, and basic common sense. Despite repeated warnings and growing frustration from voters, they refused to change course. Instead of listening, they doubled down on the same woke, preachy messaging that many Americans had already rejected. Every criticism was brushed aside as ignorance, prejudice, or bad faith. The outcome was hardly surprising. What followed wasn't just an election loss, but one of the most painful and unexpected defeats the party had experienced in recent political history. Maher's conclusion is straightforward. When a party ignores voters, lectures the country, and punishes disagreement, it shouldn't be surprised when voters respond at the ballot box.
Can we please try to remember, especially at this time of year, that most people don't decide their politics. They inherit them. It's about where you grew up in America, what your parents taught you, your life experiences, your religion. Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia was here recently, and I was amazed by the number of people who reached out after the show to say, wow, I kind of like her. Yeah, that's been my line for a while. Everyone's a monster till you talk to them.
Maher's recent visit to the White House perfectly illustrates the point he's been making all along. Everyone seems like a monster until you actually sit down and talk with them. His meeting with Trump didn't suddenly transform him into a supporter, but it did force him to replace assumptions with first-hand experience. After their conversation, Maher openly admitted that he needed to revise his notes, reconsider some of his views, and adjust the way he discussed the president. That honesty is exactly what has unsettled many people on the left. Maher's message is simple, even if it's uncomfortable. Refusing to engage only creates more ignorance. That's why he's encouraging fellow liberals to step outside their political bubble and have real conversations with Republicans. Not to abandon their beliefs, not to normalize everything, but simply to understand one another. Maher argues that dialogue doesn't weaken a movement. It makes it stronger. When shouting is replaced with conversation, myths begin to disappear, hysteria starts to fade, and reality finally has room to speak.